Right, first stage is to collect your steel rule, and as we know with the rule, steel rule, the 0 is right on the edge of the ruler. It enables you to put the rule against the edge of the timber, make sure it's flush, and then you can mark it off at 25 centimeters or 250 millimeters, like that, just dead on 25. Second thing to do is to collect your tri-square and to use your marking out tool to mark it right around the 4 edges. Can you remember when you're using a tri-square to make sure that the stock is butted and pushed right up against the timber like that, so it's not loose, it needs to be tight in. You can slide it up to where the line is. You can mark it off, move it around, make sure it's tight against it, slide it up. If you've done it correct, the last line should join up the first line like that, all the way around. Right, second step then is to collect yourself a bench hook. Put the bench hook into the woodworker's vise, get nice and tight so secure. Your pine then, where you've marked it out, we're going to cut it, and we're going to cut it with a tenon saw. Okay. Right, when you're sawing down, your fingers should be forward, like this, as opposed to like this, because it can slide. That secures it. And try to keep it nice and steady, nice and straight, and try to follow the line running down the front of it to ensure it's nice and square. And then we can check to see how square it is by using a so we can hold it up to the light and see that it's nice and square. If it's not, then our option is to use the sander and sand it so that the end is square, but keep checking that it's square. Step 3, use the steel rule again, make sure it's flush, and I'd like you to mark it out at 150 millimeters, so there. Tri-square. You notice it lines up all the way around, and then we cut it again to make 2 pieces. So I'll have 1 piece at 15 centimeters and 1 piece at 10 centimeters. We're going to make the mortise and tenon joint. So this part is the mortise. This will be where the hole is cut through, and this will be the tenon. We'll mark off the tenon first. So instead of measuring this and marking it off onto this part, the easy way is to literally put on top. Use this part to mark this one off. Make sure it's nice and flat at the back. Put a mark there. That is now the thickness of this material. Again, use your tri-square correctly to mark it off around the 4 sides. Next you need to collect a marking gauge, and you need to set up the marking gauge at 10 millimeters. So between the stock and the pin is 10 millimeters. So you can turn the screw here, set it at 10 mil, and then you can lock it in place so it's set at 10 millimeters. Then we can scribe round. Can you make sure that the stock is tight up against the edge of the wood? There's no good at being out here. It needs to be nice and tight up against it like you would with marking gauge, and you scribe it back so that the pin scribes a line into the pine. You turn it around, do the other side, and you can put this into the vise. We can also scribe across the top and the other side. We can then mark out the waist. This is waist, this is waist, the middle bit we'll keep. So we need to use a tenon saw to cut down on the line, and we're going to cut down to where we've scribed out to this point here. We can do the same on both sides and then par off the two sides so that we're left with just the centre part. So the vise will secure your timber, tenon saw, when you start sawing, try to saw so that you're just touching the line. I can still just see the pencil mark showing here. And again, I'm sawing vertical. Okay, I'll do the same on this side. And now we're ready to par off the two sides so that the centre part still stays in place. There's two ways you can do this. One way is to use a saw. The indent from the marking gauge is excellent at this stage because the saw can actually go right into the indent. And you can follow the groove. Start sawing on an angle. Square across the top. And make sure that you're following the groove as you go down on both sides. That's one. The second technique is to collect the chisel. You notice on the chisel it's got a flat side and it's got a beveled side. The flat side can go into the line, the groove, sorry. The beveled side should go on the waist. This is the waist. The waist has been marked off. It would be silly to try to knock it out in one. So what we'll do is we'll take it off in sections. Now we would never use a hammer with a chisel because what can happen is when you drive it, inside of here there's a tang. The tang can be forced through, can split out, and then obviously could go into your hand. So we use a mallet instead. So secure it. Make sure that the chisel is vertical. You can lock your arm at this stage and then tap it down. So I'm taking it off in layers. So I'll half this again. And now this time the chisel can go right into the corner of the groove. And it should follow the line. Like that. what you may need to do is to clean this face up a little bit. So if you put it back into the vise, the chisel, flat side down, bevel side pointing up, you can use then to take up any high points. You can see now I've got both hands on the chisel. Lots of accidents are caused by people using the chisel wrong. For example, one-handed like this. What can happen is it can slide and end up going into your hand, or securing the piece of work without using the vise. You can see how it could easily slip and go into your hand. So both hands on the tool makes it virtually impossible to hit yourself. So you can take your time with this, clean up the joint, and scrape it out. Okay. Right, so you see now we've got a shoulder on the two sides, but there should be a shoulder all the way around. So use your steel rule again. This time we're going to mark in 5mm and 5mm here. You can use the rule again to mark off the two lines. Back into the vise again. Line up the saw with the two shoulders. Saw down. Saw down. And then, as you know, you have two options. You can either saw or you could use a chisel. I think for this stage I'll just use a saw. You should end up with a tenon with the shoulder all the way around, which is nice and clean, and it's flat. You can still just see the pencil mark which I initially drew out. So the mortise then, we'll need to punch a hole through this piece this size. So we need to mark that out next stage. Next stage is to mark off the mortise from the tenon. So if we offer the tenon up against the mortise, make sure it's tight against it. Now so you can try and get equal distance on both sides. And then we're going to mark it out. So that is the width of the tenon. We can then use a square to square it back, and you can see then it lines up. So the next thing that we do, you put this way, so that the whole side of it is flush on both sides. It can mark off how wide the joint is. And again, we can mark it off. You can see then that's the width marked out, both sides, and that will fit in there. So we need to take out this middle section. So we're not going to cut out the mortise. So I've collected a couple of chisels. It's about the right size there. and I've collected a wider one to run down here. So basically what we do is we outline it first, so that we end up with the groove of the chisel, and then we can chase out the middle section. Then we outline it and we chase it out, and we go deeper and deeper until we've gone to the required depth to make the joint. So, mallet. The flat side of the chisel goes to the line. The beveled edge goes in the waist. The waist section has been hashed out. So make sure it's right on the line. Can you zoom into that bit? Flat side, mallet, make sure this is secure. When going across the grain, you can hit the chisel quite hard. Be quite forceful with it. Turn around the other way, flat side on the line, beveled side in the waist. You can then use the wider chisel, same again, flat side on the line, beveled side in the waist. When chopping out along the grain, don't hit it too hard because it could actually physically split the grain out, split the whole piece into two halves. So be a little bit more gentle. And then we can chop out the middle section. If we break it into parts, it's easier to take those out. You can see this time the flat side is facing up. I can clean that out, get it nice and square. I can still just see the pencil mark, and then we go around again. And we repeat the process until we go 2/3 of the way through. And at this stage I can start to check to see how it's fitting, and that's a really snug fit. So if I keep going the same as I have been, then that should be a perfect joint. Right, so we keep chopping down, outlining it, chopping it out, cleaning it out until we get to 20mm in depth. So you can use a steel rule, drop it down inside, and you can see there I've gone to 20mm. I can now check it again. And use the mallet to tap it in. You can see it's a nice tight fit. And now the tenon needs to be cut to the right length, 20mm. So the steel rule goes up against the shoulder, 20mm. We can then saw it off. Cutting saw. And that should fit in. Perfectly. If it's slightly raised, then we'll plane that back so that it becomes flush. You can see the shoulder is tight all the way around the four sides. Smooth and plane can be used to plane the shoulders back and make the whole joint flush. Stage then is to use the sander. Obviously the guard needs to be on, and to sand back the project so that it's nice and smooth, nice and flat. PPE, wear safety glasses. And there we go. Nice and tight all the way around. And obviously we'll pull that apart again now, put wood glue inside of it, rejoint it. That'll be really strong. So it's a classic example of a frame joint, mortise and tenon.